Well, Razorback fans, we got some news with the transfer portal and a new player that has emerged that Arkansas has a great chance at getting, as well as some sad football news and some sad baseball news. So it may not be the most happy podcast, but it'll still be a great one because it is the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday as we are at the midway point of the week. Still a lot of stuff going on, which, again, I feel like we've had a few podcasts in a row where there's been football, basketball, baseball news where we kind of just cover all the bases here. And so it's been pretty exciting, and I know some people think that I should lead off with one topic over the other topic. My point is like, hey, we're going to cover them all. So don't worry about it. If you don't hear or if you don't feel like you want to hear about the first topic, just wait until the second topic or the third topic. We'll get into it. But either way, the transfer portal continues on, and with basketball, and of course we've been really focusing in on Ron Holland and the possibility of Arkansas being able to get him on campus. But now that there's another transfer that has hit the transfer portal that Arkansas is hot and heavy in on, and there's a really good connection there and a possibility that he could be joining the Razorbacks. We'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, according to 24/7 Sports, Arkansas has the number 3 transfer portal class in the country. Not too shabby. And I think that all of us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast have been talking about the possibility of bringing in another big man. Because you brought in a lot of guards. You've had some small forwards there too. And we know that Trevin Brazile and Jalen Graham and Mekhi Mitchell are great, as well as Bay Fall coming in. But, they need somebody else, or you want somebody else. You feel like that if they just add in another big man, they'll be able to find that missing piece. Well, how about this one? Grant Nelson. Grant Nelson. Might want to remember that name. He's from North Dakota State. Arkansas actually played North Dakota State the very first game of the regular season this past year. And he is somebody who has entered into the portal while also looking at possibly testing the NBA draft, which is not uncommon for a lot of players. He's 6'11", 235 pounds. He was first team All Summit League selection, where he averaged 18 points, 9.5 rebounds, 2 assists, and shot 52% from the field with 25 made three-pointers. He scored at least 20 points in 11 games and logged a dozen double-doubles. Yeah. I think that he would be a pretty good addition. And when Arkansas and North Dakota State ended up playing each other, first game of the year, Nelson went for 17 points, 6 rebounds in just 21 minutes of play back in Bud Walton Arena. And he followed that day up with this come from hogsports.com. He followed that day up 3 days later with an off night against Kansas, where he just had 11 points and 9 rebounds. So he officially hit the portal, and he is one of, if not the most highest ranked transfer in the portal itself right now, and makes him one of the top 5 available prospects. You know that the Hunter Dickinson thing was ongoing. It certainly doesn't seem like, which I don't even want to get into that. That's been kind of a mess and kind of dumb. For all the stories and things behind the scenes. But certainly seems like Nelson, which Arkansas has reached out to him, seems like there's some interest there. He would be somebody that could really help out Arkansas and be able to add into their mix. So I'm telling you, he's got a lot of schools coming at him, obviously. When you're a player of that caliber and you're a player of that magnitude, you're going to get everybody reaching out to you. But we know for a fact, though, that Arkansas is in the mix for some of these players, and it's not just out of coincidence. It's not just some BS getting thrown around. Even if they don't get the players that they're really going after, whether it was a Hunter Dickinson or even if it was a Ron Holland, which we don't know what he's doing, but even if Arkansas doesn't get them, Arkansas is still right there in the mix and has as good of a chance as anybody and bringing these guys into the program. So it doesn't make me think that Grant Nelson is going to be anything different, where, there's going to be a lot of schools reaching out to him, but knowing Muss and knowing Arkansas and knowing what they can provide and what they can do, they're going to have just as good of a chance at bringing him in as anybody out there in college basketball. So he's a really good player. He's a really good player. And He's got plenty of experience. He's got the length. He's got the size and everything. So I think that there's definitely a lot of excitement surrounding that. And then you can't forget, with the Summit League, Stanley Amude came from the Summit League, and we know the type of success that he had at Arkansas, and also doing stuff in the pros there too. So I think it fits perfectly for what Arkansas is looking at. I think the fit's there. I think that the availability's there. He's got great athleticism, length, and mobility. And so the front court, just imagine what that would look like. The front court, bringing in a guy like Grant Nelson, kind of said the same thing about Dickinson, but again, we're just maybe have to move on from that. But if you think about like him with Grant Nelson and Trevin Brazile alongside each other, as well as Jalen Graham and Bay Fall, that's a pretty incredible front court where you have a lot of young up and coming big time talent in Bay Fall. You have an offensive dude with Jalen Graham who just can beat you in different ways. You got Trevin Brazile, who's just a great all-around player, sick athleticism, ability to shoot threes, go inside, really no overall weakness to his game. And then you could throw in a guy like Grant Nelson, who has experience, who has the ability to score, who goes and gets rebounds, who is very selective in his shots and, make sure that he takes good shots, and certainly seemed like an absolute unstoppable force when it all came into fruition. And you can't forget about Mekhi Mitchell, which, we still are waiting on word on, depending on what the roster finalizes. But even if they find a way for him to come back, that's fine. That's a great group of 5 guys in the front court that you could really, really make it work. So as of right now, Arkansas is full at the 13 scholarships that they have. And that's assuming that Devo Davis and Jordan Walsh withdraw from the draft and return to school, which is obviously very unlikely. So if they were able to bring in Nelson, that would either be somebody else hits the portal, or means for sure at least one of those players between Devo and Walsh end up staying in the NBA draft, which is also a very good possibility there too. So, but I would love it. I mean, I know that we always talk about players that you would love, and sometimes you don't really know about the players until, it becomes real. Like, for instance, Ron Holland, it didn't really become an option until he decommitted from Texas. Then suddenly it became a real thing. Or somebody like Hunter Dickinson, it didn't really become an option or a concept until it became a real thing when there was contact being made between Arkansas and him. And now it's going to be the same thing with Grant Nelson. He wasn't an option. He wasn't somebody that people thought about until this happened and until he entered into the portal. So, you'd love to get all these players and everything, but my goodness, they could do a lot worse than Grant Nelson. And again, I would love it if they brought him in. They need all the help that they can get, especially on the inside. And you're telling me that if you had him and Trevin Brazile playing alongside each other, and then throwing into the mix, a guy like Battle, who is incredible too, and then who of course is a scorer, and then L. Ellis, who is great too. Tremont Mark, can't forget him. Keon Minifield, the point guard. Like, geez, there's just so much talent there that it would be really hard to figure out what the roster looks like. But man, I trust Muss. And I'll say this too, because we always play this game, what if, and I think it's fun. And I know people may get frustrated with it, but I think it's fun to play what if, because it's a reality. If they were able to get Grant Nelson too, and they stuck with pretty much the finalization of the roster, and we'll just say for funsies that Devo Davis moves on, but Jordan Walsh stays. Let's just say that, because I feel like that would be the more likely scenario. They both may go, but I think between one or the other, I think it's more likely that Walsh would come back rather than Devo. So say that happens, okay? Say that happens, and the Devo leaves, and who takes a scholarship would be Nelson. It would be, I think, almost every major college basketball expert or anybody who's involved or anybody who covers the sport would 100% have Arkansas in their top 5, or at least they should have them in their top 5. On paper alone, they will be that good. They will be that elite, assuming, again, that they get all the players that it looks like they're going to get, and they add in Nelson, because you still got Walsh coming back, which you know about his upside. You think about the point guard play. You haven't mentioned Layden Blocker, who's another 5-star athlete coming in. So you could make that work and make that adjustment. And again, with the Ron Holland thing, I'm just going to assume he's not coming because it's just kind of gone quiet and we don't really know. We'll have to wait and see. But still, even if you didn't get him, that's a top 5 team. And I would even go as far to say it'd be the most talented roster that Eric Musselman has had since he's been at Arkansas. it would have to be the most talented roster across the board. Now, they got to get it done. That probably means that they're going to have the same stuff happens where they struggle at the beginning of conference play, but then they get it going at the right time, playing their best basketball in March. Probably means that's all going to happen. Will they win the SEC regular season? Don't know. Probably not. Who cares? Because that does not matter. What matters is what you do in March Madness. And with a team like this, with experience, with talent, with scoring, with athleticism, with defensive prowess, and with the coaching of Eric Musselman and this entire staff, there's no reason to believe that this team, assuming it looks like this, next year could be a team that can contend for a Final Four appearance. 100%. No questions asked. Bus continues to roll. Well, let's hope that they find a way to get Grant Nelson, because the dude is legit. He is big time, and he is somebody that can really, really add a lot of great things to the Razorback roster. We'll talk a little football and some sad news with football here in just a second. But first, folks, I got to tell you about Built Bar. When we're getting here into the warmer weather months, and a lot of us are going to be planning on going on trips, beach trips, right? And when you go on those beach trips, you want to make sure that the body is like, at its peak. But it's tough. It's tough to go to the gym, but it's even tougher to be able to eat healthy and get the nutrients and the protein that you need, especially when there's all these good snacks. Built Bar helps with that, because not only does it taste amazing because it's covered in 100% dark chocolate, and it is healthy for you with 17 grams of protein and only 130 calories. There's no better snack to have than a Built Bar. They have so many different flavors to choose from, and you can pick out the ones you want, and it's really simple to get your hands on some. You can go to Built.com, check them out, all the flavors, and order them that way. Or you can go to your local Walmart and Sam's Club, go into the pharmacy section, and you can get boxes that way. No matter what it is, Built Bar is the bar for you. I promise you won't be disappointed. I have one every day myself. They're incredible. They taste great. They're healthy. And the different flavors and the new flavors they're always coming out with is just perfect. So check them out at Built.com, as well as go to your local Walmart and Sam's Club for those delicious Built Bars.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, I got to do a little football news, and a little surprise that happened yesterday, because we talked about it a week ago, that Var'Keyes Gumms, the tight end from North Texas that was entered into the transfer portal and had committed to play at Arkansas, which was on April 23rd, I believe, so just a couple weeks ago. He officially announced yesterday he had decommitted from Arkansas. Reopened his recruitment, as he says. Again, he was 6'3", 235 pounds and everything. We knew he was a great prospect out of the tight end transfer portal. But he also posted on Twitter yesterday morning that he was officially visiting California this weekend. In Berkeley. Pac-12. Cal. All right. But when he was asked by Hog Sports if he was no longer committed to Arkansas, he said, yes, sir. Of course, we know he's a second-team freshman All-American last year. He played in 14 games, 6 starts, 34 receptions, 458 yards, 5 touchdowns. And, he's no longer committed to the Razorbacks. So this is very unfortunate, because we know that the tight end position was something that Arkansas needed some help at in depth. They got some young guys in there that could really, mix it up and be great. But the fact that they had this guy coming in Gumms, who had already proven in the college football level that he can play, and he had a lot of offers to all these other places too, it's disappointing to see that happened the way that it did. Now, we don't know any details specifically about why he decommitted, because as we know, the transfer portal, or even with the NIL stuff, which gets thrown around a lot, I've talked about NIL and how great it is at Arkansas and how it's benefiting Arkansas and everything. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be times where there could be other schools involved that end up taking a little bit away from Arkansas because of their NIL. That's possible. But when I see going to Cal, I don't know. Again, this is just my reckless assumption and everything. Cal does not, to my knowledge, been known or have shown any sort of signs of having great NIL. So I was like, okay. And we know that, there's a lot of Power 5 schools out there that would try to get somebody like him on campus. But I don't know. It just seems weird. It seems weird. Like if it was something where he was visiting Ohio State or like, Texas or USC or something like that, or Oregon, it's like, okay, I could at least make some sense out of it. You'd still be bummed because you want him to be on the team because he's a really good tight end, but it would at least be able to put the pieces together. But like when he first comes out and says, I'm visiting Cal, it's like, okay, that's interesting. Don't think that NIL would have anything to do with it. And, maybe there's some connections there in the area. I don't know. It just seemed like it was really weird. He's a caliber tight end that could go to so many other big time schools, especially in the SEC. And so for him to commit to Arkansas and then decommit just 2 weeks later, and then his first trip after being decommitted is in Cal, it seems strange to me. It just seems strange. So, just a weird deal, and hate to see it, but how Sam Pittman does things. It's like, hey, if you're not going to commit and recommit and all this stuff, my guess would be that now that he's decommitted and opened up, he's probably no longer being recruited by Arkansas. That would be my reckless assumption. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but it certainly seems to be that's the case. So hate to see that. And I know, we talked about, since we're on a football topic as it is, another crazy story that happened yesterday, which was just a disappointment dealing with, it's almost weird because it's happened now twice, but you had Quincy McAdoo, which we know Quincy McAdoo was a player this past year as a freshman, was a wide receiver, but then switched over to cornerback and did a really good job. The Razorbacks Twitter account put out a message saying yesterday morning, Quincy McAdoo was involved in an automobile accident. He was transported to Washington Regional Hospital where he was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. He is in stable conditioning and recovering. Our sole focus is now supporting Quincy during his recovery. That's all we know. He's just in an automobile accident. And so it's like him and it's like Jaden Johnson. Jaden Johnson, his was like a leg injury, so that ended up being a little bit more serious. But also with McAdoo, it's like, okay, so how long is he going to be out? It's great that he's okay and that he's recovering, he's in stable condition and all that, but good grief, it's craziness to me. And I want to say somebody last year too around spring got into a car accident. Was it Trey Knox maybe? I don't know. I feel like that happened, but still just like a scary deal. And again, glad he's okay. Glad that there's no issue there, and glad that he's going to be able to be all right, but just craziness going on. So we wish him nothing but the best and a speedy recovery. So hopefully he finds a way to get back on the field and be able to be 100%, because Arkansas is definitely going to need somebody like him and somebody of his caliber to help out the Razorback football team this year too. All right, we'll talk a little baseball here on the other side of the break on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, Razorback Baseball, and their final midweek series, or midweek game, I should say, against Lipscomb, lost last night. 8-6 in 11 innings is what Lipscomb won by, and it was in North Little Rock at the Arkansas Travelers ballpark. And apparently this is the second time that Arkansas has lost there, with the other one coming in 2015 when Memphis won 5-4. So it's just strange, because I talked about it, and I don't know if I said it on the podcast yesterday. I may have talked more about it on my radio show. But I kind of went in just feeling like, hey, listen, I don't think Arkansas is going to win this game. Now, Lipscomb has lost to every SEC team. I think they're 0-7 against SEC teams this year. And like they there's a game that Arkansas absolutely could have won, maybe even should have won. But I was just like, knowing how beat up this team is and the injuries that they've gone through, and knowing that they're probably going to throw out a bunch of guys that haven't played a whole lot or aren't on the roster for reasons that they need to be on the roster, or at least into the game they wouldn't normally be in it. I was like, it just doesn't have the vibe that Arkansas is going to win. And so Arkansas didn't. It went to extra innings. It was a nail biter. You got to see some guys perform pretty well. It's good to see Ledbetter get in there and actually play really well, because I know he's had some struggles there. But he got in there too. I think he did some good things. I think that Arkansas able to get some hits here and there, but wild pitches is what really got Arkansas on the board a lot. And, Dave Van Horn was very frustrated. He was very frustrated last night by the team and by the way they played, and about some of the things that went on there too. So apparently there is, like last night too, I was at the game, but there was a home run that was hit by Chase Ketchup. That's his name. And it looked like, according to some of the replays that people were looking at from the newsstands, because again, this game wasn't on TV or streaming anywhere, that it hit the yellow line at the top of the wall, even though it was called a home run. But because no replay was available, because the Razorbacks did not produce a stream down there in North Little Rock, it ended up not being reviewed, and they just called it a home run. And even Dave Van Horn said that's a major problem. And it is a major problem. That should not happen. Now, I'm not saying that that's the reason why Arkansas lost. They didn't play well. But that home run ended up being pretty big in a game that was so close. That one run changes a lot of things. So that was frustrating. Zach Morris did a good job, I felt like. He's another guy that struggled. It was good to see him get involved. He did a good job. Fouch is another guy that struggled too. Hate to see that. I was hoping him and Bybee both were hoping to get them going too, but just was able to find anything. But because they didn't get a single out. They threw 29, 30 pitches between the two of them, and they got 7 guys on base. You just can't have that. So that wasn't great. Will McIntyre played a little bit. He played well too, and everything. So there's just some struggles, man. There's some things that get frustrating that Razorback fans see, and I know that Dave Van Horn was pretty frustrated too as the game went on and with the way it transpired and all of that. But I'd still look at it as it's a midweek game. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Arkansas's RPI went from 5 to 6. You want to win every game, of course. You want to play well, of course. But in the big picture, this is not a game that is just going to be some sort of indication or implication on what this team's going to do the rest of the year. Now, this weekend against Mississippi State on the road is something that they need to win this series. If they still want to be a team that hosts and be a national seed, this is a series they have to win. So we'll see how they bounce back. If there's problems in this series, we'll find out. But with the Dylan Carter news, where Dave Van Horn says it's not good, he's not going to go into detail, it's not good, gives you the vibe that it is a season-ending injury, which just sucks beyond belief. Another crazy injury going on there, too. It just continues to just be annoying and be frustrating, and everybody's frustrated. I get it, totally get it. But we'll see what this team continues on to do. They got to get guys healthy. And honestly, if they can find a way to get to the national seed spot after the regular season ends, I would have zero issue whatsoever when the SEC tournament comes around if Dave Van Horn's we're playing second stringers. We're going to go 0-2 and barbecue in this thing. Let's get out of here. Let's get guys healthy. Let's get them back into the mix as much as possible and get ready for the thing that matters the most, which is, of course, regionals and super regionals and hopefully Omaha. So I would have no problem if he ended up doing that. But still, just a frustrating game, no doubt, but a game that at the end of the day, hopefully has no indication of what this team's going to do, and hopefully they bounce back and hopefully they learn from it. That's the most important thing there as well. Appreciate everybody listening in to Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.